Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. So I came across an article recently, and if you go to the description below, there should be a Google Drive link to the PDF, so you hear this interactive PDF. So after you open it, you have access to all these different links. So if you click up here, link to article in question. This is basically hyperpreterism.com. So I came across this and just going through this, and these people signed they're against hyperpreterism, full preterism, and there was a time I held to their view. Matter of fact, I learned a lot from Gentry. He really got the ball rolling for me, along with Gary DeMar and so forth. So I used to hold the same view they did. There would have been a time in my life where I would have done the same thing they did. I would have signed this, it's heresy, blah, blah, But that time, I didn't really know any better. And don't get me wrong, these are sharp guys. But I have gone further in my studying, and I've opened up more. And so I just wanted to share my thoughts on this. So there are basically 7 statements where they're refuting full preterism. So again, if you go to hyperpreterism.com, it'll bring you right to this here. So if you want to go that route as well. So here are my 7 responses to their 7 statements. All right. So number 1, the original sin plunged Adam to spiritual death only and not into physical death. All right. So they're using these proof texts here. I'm going to rebut against that. When looking at Genesis 2:17, let's just go there for a second. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day, right there, that's key, that you eat of it you shall surely die. Now we know Adam did not physically die that same day, so therefore it had to been a spiritual death. And so, so I don't think that it was just a spiritual death only. It resulted in physical death later on. So I don't, as a full preterist myself, I don't reject that, that it happened to both. So there are probably full preterists out there that limit to only spiritual death, but it wouldn't hurt to ask them, hey, what about the physical death? Are they connected? And they may say yes. And there's probably a miscommunication there. So where the guy probably had a conversation with a full preterist and thought, oh, it must have been referring to spiritual death only. So that's just not the case. So me as a full preterist and full preterist I know of, they agree that they go together anyway. So no dispute there. Number 2, that Christ did not have or retain a physical body consequent upon his resurrection from death. All right, so these are their proof texts. So the physical resurrection, not spiritual, only applied to the house of Israel, not Gentiles. So we go to Ezekiel 37:11. They said to me, son of man, these bones are the whole. Now I encourage you to read the whole chapter, okay? Are the whole house of Israel. This is not referring to Gentiles, all right? Behold, they say our bones are dried up and our hope is perished. We are completely cut off. And we see this was fulfilled in 80:30 per Matthew 27:52-53, where it said the tombs were open and many bodies of saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tomb after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. So basically, the tombs were open when Christ, just right after Christ died on the cross. You read this, and we know that Christ was buried for 3 days, 2 nights, 72 hours, and a half a day later, his tomb was discovered empty. Okay, so they appeared to many after Christ would have gone to them, and that would have been Saturday evening, late evening, after the 9th hour on that Saturday. Had it been from the 9th hour on Wednesday to the 9th hour on Saturday, that's 72 hours, so it had been after that. And so, you can imagine Jesus probably praying, and, so, so he had to have, brought them over to appear to many. So, I have a video on this, by the way, the something along the lines of sign of Jonah. So I think there's more to the story. So later on, they experienced the spiritual resurrection. That's okay. The people of physical resurrection later on, spiritual resurrection, received a new body, fulfilling 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So this is 40 plus years later, about 43 years later. They were literally in their last days. I sneeze. This was fulfilled on their last day, during their last Yom Kippur, the half a time, which was Tishri 5, AD 73, or September 22nd. And then we have Philippians 3:21, who will transform the body of our humble state into conformity with the body of his glory by exertion power that he has even subject all things to himself. So, let's see here. There we go. From which also we eagerly wait for a Savior who would transform. So they were eagerly waiting. There's that time statement there. All right. And so we there, we have to understand the Jews were being a light unto the Gentiles during this time. And Paul, he could not let them go. If you go to Romans chapter 9, verse 3, he'd be willing to be a curse for his brethren. He at least, at all times, had one foot in the door with the Jewish people at all times. There are times he had both feet in the door when he's writing to a church. He's writing to a church such as 1st or 2nd Thessalonians, but there are times where you could tell both his feet was totally on the Jewish people, and the Gentiles were out of the picture. So anyway, so keep that in mind. So when it says we, alrighty, he could very well be referring to the house of Israel, all right, he would transform, okay. But that this principle applies to Gentiles as well, yeah, absolutely. For those who are born again, then this is possible. So I believe this happens with Gentiles today. They're born again. The moment they die, they're given that, they're transformed into the body of his glory. So they're not waiting around for a resurrection, all right, for a spiritual resurrection. So this happened, if one says the Gentiles are part of the house of Israel, then there's a problem in Matthew 20-38. So if you read Matthew 20-38, Jesus said the house would be left desolate. But if you want to include Gentiles on that, does that mean the Gentiles would be left desolate? And I don't think that's what he was referring to. You got Revelation 7, where it talks about the 12 tribes of Israel being sealed. Gentiles are not part of that. Matthew 19, 27-30, just go there for a second. Then Peter said to him, behold, we have left everything and followed you. Now we, the disciples, the 12 apostles, and then what will there be for us? And Jesus said to them, for an apostle, not Gentiles. Gentiles were not in view here at all when they're having this conversation. Truly I say to you that you have followed me in the regeneration when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne. You also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. This is not Gentiles. Now, yes, I know Gentiles have been grafted in, okay? Ephesians 2 talks about the inherited promise of Israel, okay? But you still had the house of Israel, your own separate plan, and that was about to be fulfilled. And this was fulfilled in AD 73, just a few years after the temple was destroyed. And everyone who has left houses or brothers, sisters, or father, or mother, or children, or farms for my name's sake will receive many times much and will inherit eternal life. This is referring to the house of Israel. Again, the Bible centered around the house of Israel, not Gentiles. But many who are first will be last, and last will be first. So those who were first, that would be last, that was the stick of Joseph. And the last first, that was the stick of Judah. So the stick of Joseph were those, the Jews came to Christ, they were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. They would arrive to Petra first, but they're the last to go up. 1 Thessalonians 4, meeting the Lord in the air. Okay, they would have been the last. Whereas the stick of Judah, they were their last. They arrived on April 11th, AD 70. Right the day after the 13th to 5-day prophecy fulfilled, Daniel 12. I have a timeline showing all this. They arrived there last, but they were the first to go. they were kind of, when you compare the two sticks, they were the elite. Okay, stick of Judah. They're the one that endured the most. They're the great purging that took place during the 1335-day prophecy of Daniel 12. So that's what I believe is going on there. Stick of Joseph versus stick of Judah. All right. So anyway, and then this happened after the Great Commission was fulfilled. So there's a great video I highly recommend by Zach Davis. And so he, just an example of sola scriptura, where you just purge all that stuff that you hear, all the garbage that you hear, just purge it out. Just let the Bible do the talking, and eventually you'll see, oh wow, the scriptures are self-sufficient. I have been blocking what the Bible has been saying all along. So I encourage you to watch this. And yeah, this is actually my comment right here. Like I said, everything's centered around the house of Israel, not Gentiles. So anyway, I encourage you to watch that video. Great stuff. All right, for number 3, let's go to number 3 here. That the ordinances of the church no longer exist for this generation, that the institutional visible church does not exist, refusing to recognize her officer authority and membership. All right, so these are the passages. So the ordinances do not have time indicators attached to them. And since they are part of the everlasting covenant, they continue on as long as the world exists. So I give you a bunch of passages where basically the world would never end. Okay, this passage here, forever and ever, should be no end. And Ecclesiastes 1:4, but the earth abideth forever. Okay, so your theology says that the earth's going to be destroyed. You may want to look at the passages. So, alrighty. So number 4. Let's go to number 4. That second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ is already past fulfilled. Therefore, denying a physical, visible return of Christ at the end of history. And then he gives these passages here. So the proof texts they give do not support bodily return to the earth. That is superimposed in the text was not there. It's so easy for us to do that. But if we look at it from the Jewish perspective and go back to the Old Testament, and you'll see that they're not. You realize, no, he's not talking about bodily return to the earth. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." Something to think about. So why would he return to the earth and then at the same time say, "Well, my kingdom is not of this world. So what am I doing here?" He also said, "Better I do go, so I can send a comforter to you." So that's based on John 16:7 and John 18:36. So if he comes back, then how is he going to send a comforter to you? You see what I'm saying? That was a problem. So this would contradict what he said. And so the second coming required a sign in the sky for this reason, because it's not a visible activity by God. It's invisible. It's a judgment, a severe judgment. So number 5, that there is no physical resurrection of bodies of believers and non-believers at the consummation of history. So here are the passages they quote. Number 5, John 5:21, 28 to 29, fulfilled in AD 30. Go to Matthew 27, 52 to 53. It had to do with the house of Israel, not Gentiles. Ezekiel 37, verse 11 clarifies that. And when you read about the vision, it mentions something about a loud noise. That loud noise, the benchmark to the earthquake in Matthew 27, verse 50 to 53. So, So, and then Romans 8, 22 to 23 was fulfilled during the house of Israel's last Yom Teruah, which is a feast that has to do with judgment. It's a 10-day feast. And on September 22nd, 87 was their last day on earth. Philippians 3:21 was also fulfilled at the same time. After this passage applies to born-again believers the moment they die. All right, so this principle of Philippians 3:21 applies to us. Note, it specifically had to do with the house of Israel, though. All righty. Number 6, that there is no future final judgment of all men. And then they quote these passages. All right. So, if we go to Acts 17:31, let's see here. It's limited to the oikomene, all right, which is the Roman Empire. All right, so yes, it's all men, but it applied only to the Roman Empire at that time. All right. So this is not cosmos or anything beyond that. So obviously, when they use oikoumene and you have a census, and that oikoumene is built upon a census during that time, it's just heavily referring to all men during that time. The rest of the protect that they gave, Matthew 13 and John 5:28, 2 Peter 2, apply to the house of Israel. Matthew 13, 36 to 43, if we go just 3 chapters earlier, Jesus said, "Hold them, do not go in the way to Gentiles, and you see the Samaritan enter you not." So the Gentiles were not in view here during that time. John 5:28 to 29, same thing. The Gentiles were not in view. And in 2 Peter, Peter was an apostle to the Jews, not Gentiles. So so you hear the JPEG that I have. You can see that the 12 apostles were for the 12 tribes of Israel. There's only one for the Gentiles. And there's a lot of confusion with that. If you go to Galatians 2:7, Paul says, "On the contrary, seeing that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had been to the circumcised." All right. So Peter, he was an apostle to the circumcised, but he did preach the gospel to the Cornelius household, the Gentile household, in Acts chapter 10. But that was only the purpose of the official transition, the gospel going from Jew to Gentile. Right? He did not make them convert all of a sudden an apostle to Gentile. That's not what's going on at all. It was just that official transition. And then Paul came on the scene, and then he took off from there. But Peter stayed being an apostle to the Jews. All right, it never changed. So in 2 Peter specifically, was written to the stick of Judah. Which he was feeding them during that time, and he could just hand them that letter. And you have to keep in mind, the stick of Judah were in the midst of Jews who rejected Christ, denied Christ in the flesh, the Antichrist, if you will. And so he written it in such a way where it kind of only those who were part of the stick of Judah would have read it. And then 2 Peter chapter 3 is a second epistle to them. Okay, so 2 Peter 1, chapters 1 and 2 is one epistle, and 2 Peter chapter 3 is another epistle to the stick of Judah. 1 Peter was really to the stick of Joseph when he wrote to the 5 churches in Asia Minor. That was the stick of Joseph, all right? And so, let me just show you the timeline what I'm talking about. So, there's actually a simpler version here. Bear with me here. So you go to this one here. So you had the stick of Joseph right here. All right. They had already arrived in Petra. All right. And then you had the stick of Judah. So Peter had already written the stick of Joseph. This is before their gathering. All right. So it had been sometime around here in AD 66. Let's see here. Yeah, here's here's AD 66. Okay. So it was sometime around here where Peter wrote. 2 Peter and then 1 Peter and then 2 Peter again, 2 Peter 3. So during this time. And it was that year where AD 66, where the house of Israel, that was the last they were writing anything down. So all the New Testament books were written by AD 66. I know some people believe Book of Revelation was written in the 90s. Some people believe that Book of Hebrews was written in the 90s, whatever. No, they were all finished by AD 66. When it said to now the seed, that started first day of their gathering, September 11th, AD 66. From that point forward, they were not writing anything down at all. So anyway, where are they going with this? Oh, excuse me. Anyway, number 7, that there is no end to history in which Christ completes his victory over sin and death. All right. So I highly recommend that you watch this video here, 1 Corinthians 15 video link. Click on that. Okay. This is Mike Sullivan. He did a great job with this. There's some things I need to say though. Did I put it in here? Yeah. So Lord's Coming was from AD 66 to AD 73. Mike Sullivan's, he's also a full preterist like me, but he believes everything ended in AD 70, and that's it. Where if you look at my timeline, obviously I disagree with that. So here's AD 70, but I believe that's when the stick of Judah fled the temple. It's recorded by Josephus. And then you still had a 1260-day prophecy of Revelation 12:6, where they had fled. So they fled by foot. So they went from Jerusalem to Petra, all right? Unfortunately, Roman Catholics believe that Peter, when he said Babylon in 1 Peter 5:13, that he's referring to Rome. Well, that means these people had to flee all the way near Rome, wherever Peter ended up escorting them. It's just so highly problematic. No, I don't think Peter was referring to Babylon as in Rome, but Babylon, Egypt. And if you look at the topography and think through the logistics, it all makes sense. So I have a video series on that, the Gathering. If you go to my playlist, Gathering, I go over all that there. So anyway, so John 6:11, and then 2 Peter, it had to do with house of Israel, not Gentiles. Again, Peter was an apostle to the circumcised, not uncircumcised. Paul was the only apostle to the Gentiles. Peter was not, and John were not apostles to the Gentiles. I know when a person reads the book of Revelation, they might get the idea, he must be writing to Gentiles here. No, it's really the Jewish people that came to Christ. They were scattered all throughout the nations. If you look at it from that perspective, the 7 churches in Asia, being the Jewish people, could there have been Gentiles in there? Yes. But keep in mind, the Jews were a light under the Gentiles this time. They are only sharing information to Gentiles that are pertinent to Gentiles. John would not have shared the book of Revelation to Gentiles. It had no value to them. And so it was written in such a way where a Gentile would read it, they had no idea what it's talking about. Where the Jews who knew their history, light bulb after light bulb would come on, and eventually would have recognized, he's talking about Egypt here, and Peter talking about Babylon there. Babylon, Egypt, we're about to go for the gathering, and so forth. So anyway, so their last day at the house of Israel, Tishri 5, AD 73, which was September 22nd, AD 73. That was the half a time of their last Yom Teruah. So I encourage you to watch Mike's video. This is great. Sharp guy. And another thing I need to share too is that he believes Daniel's 70 weeks ended right at AD 70, and I think the reason why he does that because he thinks that the fulfillment of vision prophecy had to take place inside that 70th week. But if you read Daniel 9:24 carefully, that's just simply not required. That's just not the case. So I have more videos on that if you go search for my videos. But anyway, he does a great job with 1 Corinthians 15, and really he goes over the text very carefully, the grammar and the Greek and so forth. He does a really good job. He applied pretty good hermeneutics there. So anyway, so that's my rebuttal with these 7 statements made by whoever put together hyperpredators.com. So again, I learned greatly from Gentry. I hope these guys will become full predators someday and realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how inconsistent I was, in my approach to scripture. And James White, I listened to a lot of his material, but anyway, thank you for watching, and That's just my rebuttal against this. Again, there's one point in history where I would assign this. I had the exact same view these guys did, but after further study, and I just have a much better feeling now being full preterist, and a lot of the light bulbs came on after recognizing full preterist is the correct perspective. That does not mean that the full preterist camp is perfect. I mean, he has something that I disagree with. I'm sure he disagrees with me. So it's not perfect, but I do believe it's not perfect in the sense of everybody agreeing in harmony on everything. But I do believe it is the correct view. And again, there's a time where I used to look at the full preterist view like, oh my gosh, watch out for these guys, And after further studying and using good solid hermeneutics, I am absolutely convinced actually that it is the correct perspective. It's a matter of getting there. So anyway, well, thank you very much. And again, hope you enjoyed the video and hope you continue to enjoy your studies. Have a good day.